All right, so you asked the questions, I've got the answers. You asked a few questions about our lighting setup that we did last couple of videos, and here it is. The light pole. So the light pole was 2 meters in length in the end. It was a bit of 25mm conduit that we just wrapped with a roll of LED light stripping. Each roll was 10 meters long, so 3 lengths will get you a coverage of about 2 meters over a 25mm corrie. Just slid it over with 40 to 20 clear heat shrink, and just capped off the end to keep some sort of moisture out. The only downfall on this unit was that the LEDs that we got, the drivers are actually right up against the actual connection to the LED. So this is all going to be in the weather. So this really wasn't suitable for an outdoor application, but we just made a bit of a monster out of it and just sort of let it work, do its thing. And in the end, yeah, you can see in the video, we just stuffed in a plug and a nut and a bolt, allowing us to have a thread at the end and a nut to wind onto the bracket for the pivot to mount the actual unit. So yeah, it worked well. It did light up a good area. It also came with a remote control, pretty basic, just gave you on-off colours, strobes, flashes, that kind of stuff. Or you could just choose a white colour if you wanted to. You can make that flash. You actually, if you really worked it out, make each LED do something separately. And at times you find that this remote just actually worked and talked to all 3 LED drivers at the one time, so you didn't need the other 2, just threw them away. And then whatever you set the remote to, the light itself, when it came back on, it would just keep that program. So you could set it once, forget, turn the power off, turn the power on. So you would actually have to pull the remote out every time. Yeah, actually worked quite well. It's very long, and the idea was it sort of gets wave around, and as you're driving along, it just sort of shake and look a bit silly at night. And yeah, so that's the light pole. So we did 3 mounts in the end. So one was this single mount, just came with a slot, so you could get a bit of adjustment when you bolt it into your surface. It can go either way. It has one hole in the top, so you can try and mount a light. It actually wasn't big enough for an aerial, just messed up the measurement, and that was sort of how it ended up. And then we had the same mount but in a double, so 2 slots, just once again to give you some adjustment. So it was designed to go on the side of an awning rail, but it can definitely go on any surface you can find. You could even screw into it, or do like a 6 or 8mm bolt head in the rails with a nut on one side. Just gave it 2 random holes at the top just to mount some, maybe a couple of light fittings once again, or a center hole if you wanted an aerial or a light like that one. And then we had the actual ultimate bracket. But once again, you can win one of these. Remember, there's a competition going. It's in the last video. You've got to grab the code word, and you can chuck in this video or the other one, and you'll get a bracket and a pivot, and then you can go off and buy your actuator if you want. So this one here was aluminium, 2mm I think we made it out of, and we gave it plenty of slots. So we just gave it heaps of slots so you can mount it, because it was designed to mount flat to a surface and give you, once again, adjustment. So you can mount to your awning rail here, or awning rail like this. And then this is like give you another mounting surface. Maybe if you wanted to sit it down into something, you could mount it in, and that could sit maybe in the roof rack. But the whole idea was that would mount to your awning and then lay a long light pole or big aerial down the awning. Because if you've got a bull bar or a smaller aerial like that, I mean, that's probably going to be the whole width of your roof rack. So you're only going to be able to use a stubby aerial if you mounted it sideways. And then if that was mounted in your roof rack and it had a stubby aerial coming up and down, you can't use your roof rack, because you need the aerial. You have to take what's on the roof rack off so you can pivot it up and down. So maybe if it hung off the back or the front, it might work. But with such a small aerial, remember this is like 300mm long because of the actuator and stuff. Probably wasn't feasible to sink into the roof rack. That's why we made it onto the awning and gave it a bit of an extra position to mount things on top. So once again, you got some slots you can mount light fittings to. Or chuck your aerial, like we suppose, into the actual fitting. Just gave it, we were blasting holes in it, so we gave it 4 mounting points for your aerial. If you want it to be static, so yeah, you can bolt that on. 4 aerials, a couple of light fittings, whatever you want. Now we also gave it slots in the bottom here. People ask what the slots are for. So the idea is that when you put your pivot in, so it's got pre-made holes, so it goes in, you can adjust. That's where the actuator base mounts to, so you can give it some adjustments. So it's not a fixed point. We don't want to give the actuator like a welded fixed point in this bracket. We want to give you a bit of flexibility. So you can put your actuator in, you put your pivot in, and then you set it to where you think you want 0 or 90 degrees, and you do it up. And then if you find that maybe you need a little bit, like it's rocking a bit, there's a bit of slop, then you can undo that bolt, slide the actuator in a different direction to try and maybe level it up. And with the slots, you can kind of give it a little bit of level if you need to, but it also might help you if you've got a couple different, like if you're using different model actuators, what we used here, and the one we used is in the link below. You know, it might help you set it up. And also the idea is too, is this is universal, so you can mount this in your awning rail or on your surface, whatever, put your bracket in, but if you want it to go the other way, the bracket actually works here, so we've got holes both sides. It's actually just mirror image, symmetrical on both sides. So you can put your bracket here and pivot, or you can spin it around, pivot. So you don't need a different bracket for a different application. It goes every direction that you need it to. And the pivot itself, or the bracket pivot, pretty simple. It's just a fixed point for your actuator that moves in and out, and a pivot point, a center pivot point. The hardest bit is that it's a 50mm push, and you're trying to turn it 90 degrees. So to turn this 90 degrees with a 50mm push, it's kind of has to, and it's not a flat push because it's an actuator, it kind of lays down as it goes. Like if it's in that position there, the actuator's up, and as it pushes, it lays down. So it's not exactly a 25mm push. You've got to kind of just work out the distances, a little bit of trial error, but mostly it's maths. And yeah, and then once again, we gave it sort of 2 mounting points. We figured we've got all this effort, we might as well give it 2 mounting positions, and that could actually be a bit deeper. It didn't foul anything, it's just where we ended up with the drawing, and yeah, we can mount an aerial here or an aerial here, so you can get 2 aerials in the positions if you need to. Yeah, and actually manufacturing of this unit, we could have made this narrower, but you had issues with manufacture, so we wanted to keep it as cheap as possible. This here is $100. You know, we could probably get it cheaper if we bought more quantities, but when we buy 5, it's coming in at under $100 each, like for that. And the idea is because it's laser cut flat, then pressed into shape, so that the machine can press that easy. This one here, that's the narrowest press we could get. We were keeping obviously this. We could probably shave a little bit out of this side with like compress where the mount is, but the real width we needed to get rid of for the bolt heads, because the bolt heads are either side of this bracket, we'd have to make that turn in again like another, and the press just can't do that. So you would have to get these cut flat and then probably get your own little press with a jig and manually do every single one, and that's just going to make it more expensive. So, you know, this thing here, $100, and a couple bucks in nuts and bolts. And then you can also buy your actuator. Generally, I mean, what do you want to spend? You look at the internet, you'll find anything probably from maybe $60. We paid about $85, and I'm sure you can pay double that. I don't know about the quality and accessibility of these items, but that was sort of the price. So you're already at $100, and then you've got the actuator at 85, and then a switch. So you can go out and buy a $9 rocker switch that does in and out for linear actuators. It's about $9. Or you can actually go out and buy remote kits that are pre-wired, everything is plug it in, and they're about like $30, maybe $60. So when you look at it, it's what we're at here for the costing of this. You're kind of about $175, then plus your wiring, that kind of stuff. So you sort of get about $200 for the actuator, nuts and bolts, that kind of stuff. So it's not actually that bad, and we're happy to let people know where to get these from, or you can all get together and buy a couple and whatnot. We'll help you get your hands on one if it's something you really want. I don't think I'll be using this because I'm worried that long corrugated road, you see how your aerial really gets hammered on a corrugated road. This all set up, here's one of the actuators here. This all set up and then hitting those corrugations, I just don't think it's going to last. Like, I don't really have an advantage to having this on my cars except for a good laugh. And the weight's already getting up. It feels like it's a kilo, maybe 2 kilos, and that kind of stuff. The rattling in here is the mounting nuts and bolts there, just sort of floating there because it's loosened it off to get it here for this video. But like we're saying in the width here, it's got 2 shims each side, so it's 10mm, 10mm, because it's making up for the nut and bolt head that's mounting the actuator. So we wanted to make it narrower. We're not dictated by the 2 shims at the top here, we're dictated by the bolt heads. So I guess one way to really make it narrower, which is probably out of manufacturer, would be I could probably laser cut an arc that's going to allow the bolt heads to come through and roll through that arc. And that might give me the ability to do a cheaper manufacture because it's got that arc there, as long as it doesn't interfere with the pivot point. Not that I want to manufacture these, I really don't have the time or to drive. Happy to sort of just give this stuff away to people. Yeah, once again, it's got a bolt straight through for the pivot, a nut and bolt, 2 shims and a nut, and in the actual actuator, it's got just a nut and a bolt, and just locked in there. And you can see on the bottom, it's got a bolt here to do your adjustments, so you can loosen at the top, slide it up and down, and that would actually dictate if you're going to do a flat mount. You would probably have to use just a couple shims in there or something to mount that flat. In saying that, it was a fun project to do. Pretty easy with actuators to work. Like you just give them power one way, like positive and negative power straight to it. It'll drive its full range, and then internally it'll stop, and then you reverse the polarity. So you go positive to negative, negative, positive. So you can switch, or you can literally switch your terminals, and it will drive back the other way and stop. And I guess where we got inspiration from this was industry, like aviation industry, where the lights in the wings will come down for landing. So the actuators, we just actually put them on our 4 drives, believe it or not, cut a hole in the roof or the bonnet, and they'd come up. It wasn't road legal or anything like that, it was just a bit of fun. We also used to do them on a roof rack with an air actuator mount, so you could shoot the light up. And there's a lot of off-road companies that have been making stuff like that. They've got their own sort of setups where they can pivot light bars up and that kind of stuff. Just go on the internet, you'll see stuff like that. The marine industry, like they've got the motorised antenna mounts that come up. So you see the big yacht going to the bridge, and the antennas come down and they come back up. So that was kind of stuff. I think it was the K9000. It's an aerial mount for your car that you can get. It's pretty pricey, I think. It's an aerial mount that sits on top of your roof rack, and it can just drive up and down. It's been around for years and years, but the price was like up there. But once again, I think your price will probably have to be up there, because if you've got to manufacture stuff, you want it to last. I don't think so. I wouldn't be confident on a long dirt road like the Gib or anything like that, just for the sake of having my aerial a bit higher on my roof. On saying that too, I thought it might be a good idea for your sand dune flags, that kind of stuff. Like if you do sand duning a lot and you can't bother taking your flag off, or I don't even know if you take them off, but you could have it laying down over the top of the awning, tucked away, and then bring it up when you're driving and bring it back down. But it might have to be on the bull bar. I'm not 100% sure on that. So check your local regulations as always on that kind of stuff. I think that's about it. I don't think I have anything else to show you here. As always, it was a bit of a fun video doing this kind of stuff. If there's something you think I should be maybe building here or checking out or reviewing, as always, let me know. Till next time, guys, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Don't forget to enter the competition, grab the code word, comments down below. We're going to give a couple of brackets away, and if the brackets are gone and people want more brackets, we'll just tell you where to get them from, or we can just do a bulk order to probably keep your costs down. And you can go get your actuator and nuts and bolts, that kind of stuff. We'll show you how to put it together and all that. So, till next time.